Hey everybody, it's Al again, and we're going to talk a little more politics today. I know I missed last week's political upload, and I got real busy, and I wanted to do a follow-up to the shooting story. I just didn't have time to put one together, and there's been so much going on in that story that if I was to do an in-depth look at everything that's happened, this would be a 2-hour video. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically hit some bullet points. I'm going to summarize a few things. I'm going to talk about a little bit of detail with some things, but I'm just going to rush through this and see, excuse me, see if I can get through it all in one take. Let's see if I can do it. All right. So if you want to see my initial video on the Parkland school shooting, there should be a little card up in the corner somewhere right about now. You can go ahead and click that and then come back to this video. Otherwise, let's get on with it here. So after the shooting, and again I'm assuming everybody knows the details of that shooting at this point, the students had a meeting with Trump. I don't think I covered this in the last video. And where they got to air their concerns to Trump, and I would overall say that was a good thing. Until you find out somebody zoomed in on a little card that Trump was holding, and it was literally a card that had to remind him to be human. It had things on there he was supposed to say, things like, I hear you. Not I'm listening, but I hear you. There is a difference in that. Honestly, that's probably one of the lesser things that I'm going to care about in this, but still, that's ridiculous that you have to remind the president to be human. That tells you he can't actually relate to anybody. And I'll tell you, I get mad when I call local politicians and the people that answer the phone can't give me any kind of policy specifics or know why somebody voted some way. And usually I'm willing to bet they know why. It's because their donors told them not to, or their donors told them to vote a certain way. And yeah, I'm willing to bet that's usually it. And I get upset at that with the local politicians and House and Senate representatives. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous with the president, but what else do you expect from that moron? All right, moving on. There was a CNN town hall. And again, CNN town hall, good thing, let everybody get their side out. One of the people they had on the CNN town hall was this NRA spokeswoman, Dana Loesch. And she basically gets paid a lot of money to go out and lie for the NRA, and that's exactly what she did here. And she said things like the NRA supports universal background checks, except that they actively lobby against universal background checks and have for as long as I've paid attention. There was a time when the NRA actually represented its members. Now it represents the gun manufacturers because they're the ones that pay them all the money. Again, follow the money. But yeah, she basically spewed lie after lie, and it was sickening to watch. Frankly, it was ridiculous. And we're gonna talk about her a little more later, so keep it buckled up for that. There was a student who got to talk to Marco Rubio at that same town hall, and Marco Rubio he was asked directly if the student asked Marco Rubio if he would stop taking NRA money because the NRA is blood on their hands at this point. Again, I'm not talking about the general members. I'm talking about the organization as a whole, because the organization as a whole are the ones that are lobbied. You talk to a lot of actual NRA members, and they agree with things like background checks and that people don't need things like AR-15s. So I'm not talking about general NRA members. I want to get that straight. I'm talking about the organization itself, because they're the ones with the money. Anyway, so the student asked Marco Rubio if he would stop taking NRA money because of all this. And Marco Rubio gave him a very roundabout political answer, but the gist of it was no. And he went into how he's been a supporter of the NRA since day one, and he and people send him money to his campaigns because they buy into his agenda, and blah 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 blah. Let me unpolitical speak that for you. And again, I would suggest you go find that video, listen to what he said. Don't take my word for it. Go listen to him. But if you take the political speak out of it and turn it into real human speak, like I call it, plain speak, what he was saying is, no, they're my boss. They pay my bills. They give me money. I work for them, not you. So get out of my face, kid. That's the extent of what he said. If you take the political speak out of it and turn it into normal, human, everyday speak, that's the plain text of what he said. It's like, nope, not going to stop taking the money. Don't care that you guys are dying. Thoughts and prayers are all you're going to get. Because I care about the money more. That's effectively what he's saying. Anybody in Florida, you gotta vote against Marco Rubio. He's terrible. He doesn't even want to be a freaking senator. He ran for president because he doesn't want to be a senator anymore. He said it. The only reason he went back to being a senator is because it's a cushy job and he doesn't want to have to go work in the private sector yet. But he's actually said, yeah, I don't want to be a senator anymore. Oh, I lost my bid for president? I'm going to go back to being a senator. Ugh, that guy's ridiculous. At the CNN town hall, I have to admit, I'm unsure whether it was the armed guard or just the responding sheriff from Parkland, or maybe they're one and the same person, I don't know. But that person was there, and this guy decked out in full sheriff uniform was talking. He was arguing for gun control, and Republicans had something to say about that. We'll get to that in a minute. So that was the gist of the CNN town hall. So after that, Trump had a meeting with somebody from, I believe it was Indiana, and I'm sorry, I forget who the guy was. There's so much info here that, again, I'm just trying to go over it real quick, and I don't remember everybody's names. But again, you can look this up. And he was explaining ideas that Indiana had that could work without necessarily having guns, or things like smoke canisters. And Trump literally at one point in the conversation, when he was explaining countermeasures to him and things that they could do, I don't get it. I don't know what that means. Okay. Our president, first of all, is a frickin' moron, and he's a man-child. It wasn't the answer that Trump wanted to hear, so he didn't do any research on it. And if you watch the clip, it's obvious he did no research on this. He doesn't probably know what the other guy's talking about. He just wants to hear, more guns in schools! More guns in schools! Give the teachers guns! That's all he wants to hear. Alright? I'm sorry, our president is a frickin' moron. If you think otherwise, if you still think otherwise, I should say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Alright. And I just want to talk about that quick because it points out again how stupid and one-dimensional our president is. Alright, so the Republicans had some non-policy responses to all this. One of the first things they tried to do is they tried attacking the students. And this went through several phases. They started off by trying to go the Alex Jones route and say, oh, they're crisis actors. Because one of them was like in the background of a video from California once years ago. Oh, they're all crisis actors. They're not really students. Well, that was debunked. They're all actually students. Oh, well, CNN's putting them up to it. Again, that's ridiculous. They saw their friends shot and killed. It seems to me they would have a reason to not want to see that happen again. and to get get the guns out of the hands of people that would do that. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't think it's just me. So they're trying to attack the students, and it's sick. But what else do you expect from the Republicans? They can't win this argument on the merits of their argument, so they've got to smear people. They tried attacking the sheriff. I honestly, at this point, I don't know if it's worked, but they're trying to get him fired because they didn't go into the school. And first of all, they won't tell us whether or not these people were told to stand down, because there were like four officers there at one point, and they didn't go in, and nobody will release whether or not they were ordered to not go in, because that is definitely a potential thing. This guy had an AR-15, and these aren't SWAT guys. What kind of weapons do they have? They've got a pistol and maybe a shotgun. Even if there's four of them, the guy with the AR-15 still has them outgunned. And I'm not so sure a police issue bulletproof vest is going to stop a bullet from an AR-15. Again, could be wrong. Don't know much about him. But, yeah. So, they're calling him a coward. They're saying he didn't do his job because he didn't run in there. And whether or not running in there, I don't know what you can say on that. I really don't. But that's a line of attack they're using. And I have to say, one guy with a handgun would not have made a difference in that. The problem is that this guy was allowed to get a weapon of war. Again, that's the problem. The problem is not give the cops more weapons. The problem is keep the weapons of war out of civilian hands. Then stuff like this doesn't happen. We know that from looking at other countries. But I'm digressing. And this isn't so much a Republican one, but an NRA one. Anybody watch YouTube lately? It seems like every video you look at on YouTube today has some kind of pro-NRA propaganda at the beginning of it. I'm sorry, ad. It's really propaganda because it's full of lies. And from what I've seen of a few of them, that's all they are. They're propaganda. So that's been the non-policy response by the Republicans. We'll get to the policy responses in a couple of minutes. All right. Then CPAC happened, which is a Conservative Political Action Committee meeting or something. It happens every year. It's basically the worst of the worst in the Republican Party. So, again, Dana Loesch came on, and she did more lying. She also said some real terrible things, one of which being talking directly to the media, and you can find this clip on YouTube, you can go look for it, where she says that the media loves school shootings. They love the tragedy of it. Because if it bleeds, it leads. Now, you could argue that maybe there's some truth to them loving the ratings of it. And I think that's what she was getting at, but still, it's a pretty ugly thing to say in the context of a lot of other things she said. She said a bunch of other stuff. That she said how she was attacked. Not physically attacked, but, you know, how, yeah. It was ridiculous. The biggest one, and there's actually video disproving this one, is she said that when she left that stage at the CNN town hall, she had to be escorted out by security. They were chanting "burn her" at her. There were people rushing the stage. These are her claims. There's video of this, of her leaving the stage. Nobody rushed the stage. There was no audio pickup of anybody saying "burn her." They were chanting "shame on you" very noticeably. Shame on you, shame on you. No burn her. Nothing. And the people around her didn't look much like security. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they were playing close security, but they didn't look much like security to me. So she just flat out lied. Again. Oh, surprise, surprise. Dana Loesch said something and it's a lie. Who would have thought, right? Oh, God, that woman's ridiculous. Oops. Okay. There were a bunch of other speakers on this topic at CPAC. I'm not going to talk about most of them. The NRA head was there. There were a few other people. But another one I definitely want to make sure I talk about is, again, Trump, our president. He made a ridiculously stupid comment that anybody with any ability to read humans knows isn't true. He said that if he was at that school, he would have run into the school to go take down that shooter, even if he didn't have a gun. President Bone Spurs said this. The guy that said dodging STDs was his own personal Vietnam. The guy that got, I don't know how many deferments for bone spurs in his ankles that he can't even remember where the bone spurs were. It might have been in both of them, he said at one point. He didn't remember because his daddy got him a doctor to say he couldn't go to Vietnam and die. Because a lot of people died in Vietnam. That was the point. But, yeah. President Bone Spurs said he would have run in there without a gun. The only way he is running into that school is if there are 20 or 30 Secret Service agents in front of him, armed with bazookas and Iron Man armors. That's the only way this guy is running into that school. We've seen him get startled by stuff on the campaign trail. There's one where they literally thought there was a shooter in the crowd. There wasn't. Or that might have even been the one where the guy from the UK came over and tried to wrestle a gun away from a cop or something. But he literally grabbed the Secret Service guy and pushed him in front of him. Yeah, that's not a guy who's going to run into a school. It's not. He wouldn't have done it. He said, I think a lot of you would have done it too, because I know you all, you're good people. No, they wouldn't have. They wouldn't have gone anywhere near that school. Nowhere near it. Nowhere. All right. There were also a couple other things that happened that I'm only going to touch on really quickly. There was, and I forget where this church was. I apologize for that. But there was a church that told people to come in, bring your AR-15s, we're going to bless them. They had little crowns around their heads made out of bullets, and supposedly there was security making sure that none of it was loaded, but I wouldn't trust that. It was so bad that there is an elementary school nearby. They had to cancel school that day for fear of safety of the students. Oh, these people are ridiculous. I'm sorry. They are just... Let's bring our guns to church, because that's what God would want. By the way, Jesus is all loving and loves you. God, it's ridiculous. All right, these people are so ridiculous. All right, that tangent over. So let's talk a little bit about the Republican policy response. There's been a couple things they've tried to do, so let's be fair and take a look at what they tried to do. One thing that Trump kind of floated is basically putting armed guards at every entrance to the school and putting them on every floor. So basically we're making our schools prisons. And they've been inching towards that more and more as time has gone by anyway. I remember when I went to high school, the teachers did duty at the front desk during part of their prep. That's what happened. When I started subbing, I'd work at schools where, okay, for this time, you're not in a classroom with students, you're working the front desk. That's how it used to be. Now everybody's got to have security firms and guards and stuff. Because they're making it more and more like prisons. It's sad. So, a bill was set to be discussed in Florida that would ban AR-15s. That would outright ban them, if I'm not mistaken, on this bill. there was a party line vote whether or not to discuss it, and almost completely on a party line vote, they voted not to discuss it. The Republicans all voted, nope, we're not going to discuss it, with the exception of, I think, one. And the Democrats said, yeah, let's talk about this. Let's get this done. And there's more Republican House and Senate members in Florida than there are Democrats, so the Republicans won. But what did they talk about? Porn is bad! That's what they talked about. They talked about how bad porn is and how it's a health and how it's a public health hazard. They're ridiculously stupid. These people are. The guns aren't the problem. It's porn. Oh, God. These people are ridiculous. And then the biggest Republican policy since this has been give teachers guns, give teachers guns, give teachers guns, give teachers guns. This is a remarkably stupid idea. Stupid. First of all, and one of the Parkland students said it best on this topic. So what you want to do is you want to teach teachers, you want to train teachers to kill their students. Because that's what you're doing. Because the majority of these school shootings, they're current or former students. The vast majority of them. That's who goes into these schools. Current and former students who are disturbed and disgruntled and have an axe to grind and can get their hands on a gun. So yeah, I don't want to shoot any of my students because I'm a human. I'm not. I don't get it. And on top of that, who are you going to give the guns to? Are they going to like wear them on their hip? Are they going to keep them in a lockbox? And what are the chances that a student is going to get a hold of one of those guns? I'd say they're pretty good. Because if some high school student wants to do this, it doesn't take much for them to be able to blindside a teacher, you know, get the gun off their waist or get the keys to the lockbox. It could happen. If this law goes through, it's going to happen. I can almost guarantee it. It might not happen right away, but it'll eventually happen. And Florida has actually passed a bill that would do just this. They want to arm, I forget the number of teachers. They want to give them like a one-time $500 stipend, which, let's be real, that is just to give directly to the NRA to buy a gun. Or, excuse me, the gun manufacturers for buying a gun. That's exactly what that is. Oh, boy. It's ridiculous. And on the arming teachers thing, how many of these teachers... There's more bullets flying around. How many students do you think the teachers are going to hit that aren't the shooter? That's going to happen too, if this happens. Some teacher is going to want to shoot the shooter, but they're going to shoot some innocent student instead. I guarantee it. It's going to happen. Somebody else who might have gotten away otherwise. Get rid of the weapons of war. Again, I've said it before. You want a pistol or even a shotgun for home defense? No problem. I get that. I understand it. I still think the Second Amendment has to do with well-regulated militias because it's right there in the plain text of the amendment. But, okay. Supreme Court said it's an individual right now. So, alright. You want a shotgun, you want a pistol for home defense, as long as you lock it up. Okay, I get it, fine. As long as you can show that you can handle it safely. Okay, fine. You want a hunting rifle that, personally, one pull of the trigger, one bullet, that should be the standard and the story for any of these things. Okay, fine. Yeah, I get that, but AR-15s, they're weapons of war. No civilian needs them. Just like no civilian needs an RPG, no civilian needs a tank. You just don't. No civilian needs grenades. You just don't. All right. And I'm sorry, I'm ranting again, but I actually care about this. All right, so moving on, because that's all the Republicans have. No surprise there, no good ideas from the Republicans. But there were a couple times that were kind of positive looking where Trump said he's going to get tough on the NRA, he's going to do some kind of gun control, and I forget if it happened once or twice, but a day later he backpedaled and said, maybe we're not going to do that. Well, he didn't. He sent aides like Kellyanne Conway out to say it. He even said at one point that you got to take the guns first and then do the due process second, which shows he has no understanding what due process is, because, again, he's a moron. And I will keep saying that because it's true. Our president is a moron. Where's it with Republicans and electing morons? Anyway. But there were other responses to this. There are a bunch of companies that have cut financial ties with the NRA. And I think that's awesome because that's the only way they're going to listen is if they start losing money. The pocketbook is the only way to hurt these people. They don't care if you die. They don't care if your kids die, as long as they're getting their money. As long as they're getting their money and they're not the ones with the guns to their heads. They don't care. So companies have started cutting ties with the NRA, which I think is awesome. Airlines, rental car companies, other companies that I can't name off the top of my head. But again, the Republicans also have a response for this, and they're threatening to punish companies that cut ties with the NRA. And there's a specific story on this of Delta Airlines. They used to give a discount to NRA members. And they said, well, we're not going to do that anymore because of all these shootings that they're not doing anything about with their products, or the products that they're the manufacturers they work with produce, causes these shootings. So we're not going to give these discounts anymore. It doesn't look good for business. So and I want to say it's in Florida, I could have the state wrong, but there is a Republican politician who says, okay, well, you're going to cut ties with the NRA. We're going to punish you. We, the government, are going to take away tax breaks. We're going to take away perks you get. Now, to be fair, I don't think they should have those tax breaks in the first place. I think they should have to pay their taxes just like you or me do. But for the government to come in and say, you aren't saying the politically correct things, so we're going to punish you. You're not being politically correct, so we're going to financially hurt you. That's what these Republicans are saying. See, that's what people don't get, is they don't understand where political correctness actually comes from. They don't understand what it actually is. This is political correctness, what these Republican lawmakers are trying to do. You don't have the politically acceptable position, we're going to punish you. That's political correctness. Versus Republicans who just want to say horrible, incorrect things and say it's because of political correctness. This is political correctness. This right here, what they're trying to do to Delta Airlines. We're going to make you pay more money because you don't agree with us. That's political correctness. That's what the Republicans are trying to do. And again, they continue to try to do this because they have no actual argument. Like a lot of things, they don't ever actually take on a topic. They have to strawman, and they have to um, warp it in order to get it to work in their favor, because nothing ever does. Not, or almost never does. I'm sure you could find something here or there that does, but very rarely. And even Rush Limbaugh, Rush Limbaugh. I got my names mixed up in my head. Yeah, Rush Limbaugh even came on his radio show and said something to the effect of, well, I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing was made up. I don't remember exactly what he said, because it's Rush Limbaugh. He's stupid. Who pays attention to Rush Limbaugh anymore? But, yeah, it's... I don't understand these people. I don't get it. I don't understand how you can be so callous about your fellow Americans dying. They mean that little to you. Okay, if I don't stop now, I'm going to get off on another rant about this, and I don't want to do that. This video is already over 30 minutes long. Thank you for listening. I know I missed last week's political upload, and yeah, so I'm making up for it with this one, I guess, or trying to get back in the habit of doing it. For anybody that stayed around, thank you for sticking by. I appreciate the views. Feel free to, if you like my content, feel free to like it. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to comment if you want. I would like to keep the comment section civil. Let's not get into any turf wars, please. I think the ideas that I've laid out, when I talked about ideas in this one, this was mostly just running through what had happened, doing bullet points, but I think the few ideas I've talked about in here have been reasonably common sense and fairly reasonable. But again, I don't want to get into a turf war on this. If you want to have a whole policy discussion in another video, we can totally do that. But for now, I'm Al. I'm out. If you want to come back Wednesday, I'll be uploading more of Batman Arkham Asylum. And yeah, we're getting towards the end of that. I'm going to have to find a new game to do after that for my streaming and my uploading days. Anyway, sorry, I'm Al. I'll see you next time.